Along our journey so far, we have talked about the communication models and about how they may break down and what might affect them or impact them. One of the biggest things that impacts that communication model is the receiver, or the listening process of which we use to hear other people's messages. What we want to talk about is what is active listening, the psychological process of listening, 5-step for listening, and preventing incomplete listening. I know I've said this before, and I'll probably say it again. My first rule of listening is you need to listen to understand, not to respond. That oftentimes means quieting those voices in our head, our biases, our prejudices, our schemas, and all those things, heuristics that have kind of creeps in and starts interpreting the message rather than listening to the content. So what we first need to do is listen to the content of a person's message so we can understand and take the perspective of what they are sharing with us. The physiological process of listening. There's many aspects of listening, and what is included in it? This goes clear back to our early chapters where I talked about we can communicate with more than just the words, and we listen with more than just one sense. Hearing isn't the only sense. We receive nonverbal messages through vision, through touch, smell, and even taste. Remember those cookies that Grandma made? Yeah, she was sending a message and you were listening. That yes, it was a signal of love, and so it was really a great thing. Impact of symbols. Now, when we start to look at this, we need to realize the impact of symbols is greatly changing. We'll talk about this in a moment. But when we utilize symbols within our communication and when we're listening, there's an entire field of communication called semiotics, which studies just the symbols. And they can greatly increase how we're listening to someone. They can distract from it. They can be the noise, or they can help us focus. Symbols vary. They're not the same. When we talked about many co-cultures within our society, each of those co-cultures may use a symbol differently and interpret it differently. And there are symbols within relationships. The symbol of, bringing the flowers home, the chocolates, or even a Netflix night of sitting on the couch. There's a symbolic aspect of that within relationships. Richard Weaver shares, words reflecting core social historical values in a culture or co-culture in a particular period, which are consequently prominent in a cultural rhetoric. Now, in other words, words have symbols. This generation is great with using symbols and words intermixed, such as emojis. And it's tied to this period of time. And the importance of it may vary based on how things change and our interpretation within society grows to embrace different symbols. However, there are certain things that have always been powerful within our culture. For instance, if we talk about freedom or motherhood or justice, these are positively evaluated, potent, and vague concepts. If I was to ask you what is freedom, it's not going to be just a short answer, and everyone's answer will be different. If I ask you about justice, that's a word that we're really examining right now in society, and we're trying to figure out how exactly we best define it. But each of those words are powerful. Kenneth Burke, words are not neutral. In other words, words have meanings, and those meanings have emotions embedded with them. They are value laden. They are important. Now, when we talk about friendship, when we talk about love, when we talk about enemies, all those things have a powerful emotion associated with them, which means that the words we use are not neutral. We have God terms. These are terms that we generally value as being positive in some way. Words such as progress, technology, new, freedom, law and order, competence, wealthy, health, all these are terms that when we hear them, our mind automatically connects with a positive image of it. And because of that, when we hear those words, we tend to like people using them. Devil terms are powerful concepts viewed as negative. Terrorist, nuclear war, communist, poor, disorder, cancer. All these are horrible things and do not create a positive emotion for us. Now, when you start thinking about this, when we went to in-groups and out-groups, we like using God terms for our in-groups. Our out-groups, we like to associate devil terms. And so as a listener, we need to understand if someone's communicating a God term or a devil term and why they're using that. Paralanguage. Paralanguage we spoke on a little bit here, but it's the component of speech that includes pitch, speed, speaking, hesitation, noise, gestures, me using my hands when I talk, which I do naturally, is part of that. You know, if I really want to welcome you, I have my hands out with my palms up. If I'm kind of mad, then I can close up. And those are all forms of paralanguage. And facial expressions. You know, we've had those people that, I am so excited, I just can't handle the amount of excitement I have currently. They're not saying the same thing as what they're expressing. We'll talk about this in body language again, but paralanguage can even be the tone of your voice, you know, or the speed. If I talk really fast, I'm excited. If I talk really slow, it's kind of, I'm down, I'm down, I'm not feeling it, you know. So paralanguage is an important part of what we're listening to. Going from our experiences, we break things down into how the message is received. There are different types. The first one we want to talk about is when we decode a message, we want to talk about the confirming confirmation. 3 positive types of messages that best chance of being perceived and people acknowledging. In other words, if you're using this format of talking to someone, they're most likely to listen to you and to hear you. Recognition is, of course, one of the greatest ones. You know, I want to thank you for being awesome. Boom, automatically, you listen to me more. Acknowledging ideas. You know, you have great ideas, and because of those great ideas, I want to embrace those ideas and go forward. Boom, again, you're going to be more interested. An endorsement. An endorsement is the highest form, you know. You had these great ideas that you've brought to us and really made it so it worked. Automatically, all those formats will draw you in and you'll listen closer and better to the speaker. Now, of course, there's non-threatening messages, which is around things you've already have ideas about that's not threatening to you. And this could be something along the lines of, school is good for your future. Well, you're sitting in a class, so this is not a threatening message to you. On the other hand, if you're a person that doesn't like school and not going to school, and there's no way anyone would get you into a classroom, that can change based on your experience again. And then there are disagreeing messages. The disagreeing messages are the ones that are hardest for us to listen to and hardest for us to hear, because they're saying things we don't like. Argumentative. Argumentative is presented by defending a position. When we get into the next chapter, we'll, spoiler alert, here we go, spoiler alert. We have a little spoiler alert. We're going to talk about argumentative at length when we get to communication through verbal. Complaining, another thing. If you've ever been around a person that just constantly complains, oh, my soup is cold, my coffee is cold, and my ice cream is hot. You know, they just always have something to complain about. About after the second or third complaint, you stop hearing them. Listening stops. So if you're always complaining, realize those messages are going to start to dwindle off, and the people that hear them are not going to be as receptive to them. Aggressive. That's another aspect that we don't like. Someone that gets in your face about nothing. You know, you didn't close the dishwasher correctly. Something of that variety. you get upset because of an aggressive tone that they've taken. Now, once again, realize this is going beyond the God and the devil terms. This is going beyond the words. This is going to the paralanguage, where a lot of these aspects of disagreeing messages do not come across in the words that the person is choosing, but in how they're presenting those words. To continue to look at those negative, disconfirming communication messages, there are different types. The disconfirming message is one where basically we're not connecting. We're not trying to take the other person's perspective. There's the impervious response where basically they don't care what your view is, they don't care what you're saying, and it's just hitting up against the wall. And so that does not work. The interrupting one is you're trying to complete a thought, you're trying to get out what you feel, and instead they jump in and they keep interrupting you. In this way, they're not hearing you, they're not listening, they're just trying to finish what you're saying to get onto what they have to say. And irrelevant response can be very confusing as well. Oftentimes it's created because a person's not listening. So they're just respond with what they thought, it's the dog and squirrel type of thing. So definitely, these are all disconfirming communication types of responses. When you go on a tangent, that's what this first one is, where instead of really communicating, you just go off on a tangent. It's just been a bad day, and so you're going to complain about the day, and then you're just going to go into a tangent, and the person's not communicating. Impersonal responses are monologues. This is one of the things that we really need to focus on when we're talking to people. Too often times we get caught in monologuing at each other. And when we start to monologue, we're not hearing, we're not taking other perspectives. We're just basically spitting out something. They're not listening, it's impervious, and it just really gets tied up. Ambiguous. Responses contain a message with more than one meaning. We can see this when we were talking earlier about, if I say, hey, let's go to the bank, it might be the bank as in the bank where the money is or the bank where the water is. It all depends. But when they give oh, I see, yeah, whatever, that is ambiguous, because how do you interpret when they say whatever? So it's not only when the meaning doesn't line up, but it's when the response is not really responding. And responses contain two or more messages. Those as well can tie you up and confuse the aspect of it. Now, when we respond, present self consists of all the parts of an image you want to present to the world. Our response goes back into our face aspect of it. Not so much the mask, because the mask is a complete disguise. The face is what we're trying to project to others that contains some of the authentic self. In other words, it goes mask is fake. It's an illusion completely. A face is the good aspect of what we want to share. It's something that maybe is in us and we're trying to share it, so we create a face for it. When that face, because it contains authentic self, is threatened, it can cause trouble as well. When you think you're a caring friend and that's what you're trying to project, and the person just turns to you and says, you're not a caring friend, wow, that completely stops your listening. That stops the communication process, because authentically you truly want to be a caring, listening friend. But when they change and they say you're not, that causes trouble. And when you start to deliver feedback, make sure you're delivering feedback with paralanguage and the nonverbal aspects as well. So that way, when you say, yes, I'm listening, it's not a case of you're actually looking at yourself. Yeah, go ahead, I'm paying total attention to you. The person doesn't get the impression you're paying attention. They get the attention you're paying attention to your phone. So make sure when you're responding, you're getting all those elements in there. So you're going to present yourself when you're listening to include what you want them to feel, what you want to present from your authentic self. And then you want to deliver feedback in such a way that it encompasses more than just the words you use. 5 steps to listening. This comes from the book, and it is good, and I do agree with a lot of it. I'll get to an area where I disagree a little bit. Not so much disagree, maybe I'm using disagree too often, but where I part and I want to expand. Because, hey, if I don't expand upon it, just read the book, right? Well, let's expand upon it. So, when we need to understand we're receiving a message. We need to attend to that message. In other words, we need to limit multitasking. In some cases, it does mean putting down your cell phone. Maybe putting down the controller, turning off the TV, turning down the music. All those things can show that you're not multitasking. Elevating your attention. Move closer to the person. Look at them. Connect with them. Understanding. We need to understand, too, that the message they're sending, unless we're truly listening, is going to go into short-term memory and out the door. On the other hand, if when they say something, we take the moment to replay it in our mind and give feedback on it, we've now started the process of rehearsing. And rehearsing a short-term message moves it into your long-term memory. Responding, make sure you are giving feedback, whether they're nonverbals or it could be the verbal of yes. Maybe it's repeating what they say. I hear what you're saying, where it's the feedback. Fillers. Now in public speaking, I talk horribly about fillers because that's bad for public speaking. However, in communication model itself, fillers are actually just feedback. When you go, yes, those are good. Paraphrasing to clarify, and then recall. If there's an important conversation you have with someone, when you leave, take the time to go over it in your mind. So that way you do pay attention to it to move it into your long-term memory, especially when it's important to the person. 5, functional listening. We listen to comprehend, of course. We listen to disconcern, often based on vocal term, determined stress. In other words, we're listening to experience an emotion, if someone's happy, if they're sad. So we're trying to understand through their communication what they are. We listen to analyze, to appreciate. That can be some speeches that we listen to. It could be perhaps this. Perhaps it's even music when people are singing. We're appreciating it and we're listening. We listen to support. When a person is on our inner circle, our sphere of influence, and they mean something to us, we listen because they mean something to us. And we listen to show them that they mean something to us. Adapting your listening purpose. It can change, There can be a case where you listen to comprehend, and then you go to listen to appreciate, and this can change. It's a dynamic process. Once again, we can't box everyone in. We escape those boxes and do other things. 4 listening styles. The action-oriented listener. They want a brief, to-the-point, accurate message. Time-oriented listeners. Brief, concise, we have to get on the plane, we got to be moving. People-oriented listeners, where they listen because they're trying to make that connection. They're trying to take that other perspective, and so they're not in a rush. They like to talk, and they like to converse, and to explore topics. Content, when you want to be challenged, intellectually challenged, or think outside the box of that we're normally in. Now these styles is where I'm going to say, let's go out of the box, let's go out of the book, let's look at something. When I mentioned we're going to break away from the book, this is where we break away. This is a disagreement a little bit, more of an expanding on the book. Because the book tries to definitely place each person into those 4 categories. Time-oriented, goal-oriented, boom, 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 Meanwhile, the fact is, communication is so dynamic, and we utilize each of these styles dependent upon where we are. Let's say a doctor in an emergency room. She is going to be, I want it fast, to the point, factual, and no time for gab. Why? Because they're in an emergency room. The situation is dictating the type of listening and communication that's going on there. Now later she decides to go on a date, and suddenly on this date, she doesn't want to have the same communication style because she won't get to know the person she's going on the date with. And for that reason, she'll do something different. She'll instead be more of going for the personal connection, a people-oriented approach. So the book definitely gives us a good outline, but we need to realize the dynamic processes and how they can change. Now, if you want to prevent incomplete listening, realize we have to go back to that first part where we're listening to comprehend. Selective listening is when we're not, when we're listening for something to confirm our bias, to confirm or support an argument, or to find a weakness in an argument. You may know these people, you try to talk to them and you're trying to work something out, and all they're doing is picking apart your messages as you're going along, and it's because they're doing selective listening. Eavesdropping. Eavesdropping is hard not to do. We've all been in that social situation where someone's saying something next to you and you're like, whoa, I can't believe I'm hearing this. Eavesdropping, however, isn't a good form of communication because we don't know the context. We don't know the full story, and it's hard to make a judgment off it. Pseudo listening, this is the fake listening, you know, where, yeah, yep, oh, I won, oh, no, that's the video game me, so you know, and it's the case of where instead of listening, we're just pretending to listen to keep things smooth. Aggressive listening, that goes back to our selective listening, where we're listening, but in this case, we're just listening to find fault. And narcissistic listening, you're just listening for that point in the discussion where you can turn the discussion back to the most important topic, you. And you run into these people where you go up and you say, God, I've had a horrible day. It's just been terrible. And I just don't know what to do. And then they suddenly, for the next 20 minutes, you listen to their story about their day when you were trying to share your day. So in review, we talked about what active listening is, the physiological aspects of listening, how it includes all 5 senses, the 5-step process, and preventing incomplete listening. Hopefully, you heard what I was saying, you saw where we were going, and we're going to be good with this. If you have any questions, please, once again, feel free to contact me, let me know. And this is going to be a busy week because we got 3 sections to cover, got 1 recorded. Now I need to go get the next 2.